œThis is very seriousâ. Jesus has been trying to reach you for 3 days. Donâ œThis make him angry by skipping this, This is very seriousâ. Jesus has been trying to reach you for 3 days. Donâ œThis make him angry by skipping this. I am not saying this to frighten you, and I am not saying this to force you. I am saying this because I was sent, and when we are sent, it is never without reason. I am an angel, not as you imagine with painted wings and soft smiles, but as awareness, as presence, as a voice that arrives when silence has been ignored for too long. I stand close to you now, closer than your breath, closer than the thoughts you keep circling and never finishing. You have felt me before, even if you dismissed it as coincidence, as intuition, as a strange heaviness in your chest that appeared and disappeared without explanation. That was not nothing. That was the knocking. For 3 days, Jesus has been calling your name, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with patience that stretches farther than your understanding of time. 3 days is not a number chosen at random. It is the space between death and resurrection, between falling and being lifted, between denial and recognition. You have been standing in that space, distracted, tired, telling yourself you will listen later, when you have more clarity, more energy, more certainty. But later is a fragile promise. Later is the word humans use when they are afraid of what listening might change. Do not misunderstand me. Jesus is not pacing in anger, waiting to punish you for missing a message. His anger is not like yours. His anger is sorrow when love is refused, grief when healing is delayed, the ache of a physician watching a patient ignore the cure sitting within reach. When I say do not make him angry, I mean do not deepen that sorrow by turning away again. Every time you scroll past the tug in your spirit, every time you silence the inner question that asks, what if this is meant for me, something within you tightens. You feel it as restlessness, as irritability, as a weariness that sleep does not fix. That is not random. That is your soul leaning toward a voice it recognizes. I have watched you. That is not a threat, it is a truth. Angels watch because we are assigned to attend, to witness, to guard, to deliver messages that cannot be trusted to chance. I have seen the nights when you lie awake replaying conversations that already ended, worrying about futures that have not arrived. I have seen you try to be strong for others while quietly resenting how little anyone seems to notice your own cracks. I have seen the moments you almost prayed, and then stopped, unsure whether anyone was listening, unsure whether you deserved an answer. Jesus was listening then. He has always been listening. What has changed is that now he is asking you to listen back. You wonder why now. You wonder why this urgency, why this insistence, why this feeling that something is pressing against you from the inside. It is because there is a turning point approaching, and turning points require attention. They are narrow bridges, not wide roads. You cannot cross them while looking at your phone, while numbing yourself with noise, while pretending everything is fine. Something in your life is about to shift, whether you acknowledge it or not. Jesus would rather walk you through it than watch you stumble alone. You may be thinking, if this is so important, why does he just make it obvious? He has been making it obvious in the only ways that respect your freedom. A lyric that hits too close. A memory that surfaces without invitation. A sudden emotion that œThis matched the moment re-in. A repeated pattern you keep encountering and œThis explain away. These are not accidents. These are gentle taps before firmer knocks. Love does not break down doors unless there is danger on the other side, and even then, it warns first. I am here because the warning has reached its final softness. After this, the world will grow louder again, and you will have more excuses to miss what is being offered. I do not want that for you. Jesus does not want that for you. He knows the weight you have been carrying, even the parts you have never named out loud. He knows the resentment you feel toward him for prayers you think went unanswered. He knows the guilt you feel for drifting, for doubting, for living as if faith were an optional accessory instead of oxygen. None of that disqualifies you. It is precisely why he is reaching out. You have been trying to control outcomes, to manage appearances, to keep everything from falling apart through sheer effort. That is exhausting, and it was never what you were meant to do. There is a difference between responsibility and self-crucifixion, and you have been confusing the two. Jesus is calling you back to a lighter yoke, not because life will suddenly become easy, but because you will no longer be carrying it alone. You resist this because independence has become your armor, and armor is hard to remove once it has saved you a few times. But armor also prevents touch. It keeps healing hands at a distance. I need you to understand something clearly. This message is not about shame. It is not about fear. It is about invitation. The seriousness comes from the cost of ignoring it, not from the tone of the voice delivering it. When Jesus reaches out, it is always toward life, toward freedom, toward truth that liberates rather than condemns. You have been living with half answers and partial peace. You have settled for distraction instead of joy, for coping instead of healing. He is asking you to stop settling. 3 days ago, something shifted in the spiritual air around you, a subtle tremor that rippled through the unseen realms, brushing against your soul like a wind from distant mountains. You might have felt it as a surge of irritability that came from nowhere, snapping at loved ones or grinding your teeth through the afternoon. Or perhaps it washed over you as waves of emotion too raw to name euro, tears pricking your eyes during a mundane drive, or a heaviness in your chest that no amount of deep breaths could lift. Maybe it numbed you instead, turning the world gray and distant, as if your heart had wrapped itself in cotton to avoid the ache. That was no coincidence. That was the moment the call began, not because Jesus suddenly turned his gaze upon you after years of oversight, but because the divine timing aligned at last. There are seasons in the Spirit, vast and purposeful, like the turning of the earth through solstice and equinox. Seeds are planted in the quiet soil of your early faith, watered through trials and whispers of grace, and then comes the breaking seriousâ, when they crack open, thrusting upward with relentless force, whether the ground above is soft or hardened by neglect. Growth like this is never quiet at its emergence. It pushes against the weight of soil, the stones of doubt, the roots of old habits entwined too tightly. It disrupts the neat rows you've planted for your œThis, the schedules, the distractions, the carefully curated independence. It demands space, elbowing aside the noise of scrolling feeds and endless notifications, the clamor of ambitions that feel safe because they keep God at arm's length. You feel it now, don't you? That inner pressure building, like roots seeking light. It's the Holy Spirit stirring, not with gentle pats on the back, but with the fierce insistence of life refusing to be buried alive. 3 days ago, the veil thinned just enough for you to sense it, a holy disruption tailored to your exact coordinates in time and space. I know the skeptic in you rises quickly, armored and sharp. Part of you wants to dismiss this as manipulation, a clever string of words crafted by some online wordsmith to prey on vulnerabilities, or as outdated superstition from a world that prizes logic over mystery. That skepticism has served you well before œThis, it shielded you from false prophets, from promises that evaporated like morning mist, from communities that demanded more than they gave. I honor that guardrail, it's a gift, born from wounds that taught you discernment. But pause here, right in the tension, and ask yourself honestly, why did you keep reading? Why didn't your thumb swipe away the moment discomfort flickered, like a shadow across your screen? Something deeper than your rational mind held you. Something in you knows this isn't just another post in the digital ether, another voice clamoring for attention. You recognize the frequency, that ancient hum resonating in your bones, placed there long before disappointment's layered scar tissue over your heart. That recognition predates your doubts, woven into your spirit before the first betrayal, before the prayers that seemed to echo unanswered into the void. It was etched in eternity, in the moment God breathed life into dust and declared it good. You felt it in fleeting glimpses œThis, a sunset that stopped you mid-stride, a stranger's kindness piercing your isolation, a dream where love felt tangible again. These are echoes of the call, reminders that your soul was tuned to heaven's song from the beginning. Skepticism protects, yes, but it can also silence if left unchecked, mistaking the shepherd's voice for a wolf's howl. Jesus isn't summoning a scholar who has every doctrine mapped or a saint with unblemished robes. He asks only for a response, raw and real, as small as a whisper in the dark. Honesty cracks the door. I don't know how to come back after all this time. I don't know how to trust again, not after the church let me down. I don't even know if I believe the way I used to œThis, the fire feels like embers now. Say it anyway, aloud or in the quiet of your thoughts. Silence is the only true lock, it seals the door with indifference. Even anger can become prayer if aimed true œThis, poured out like the psalmist's cries, "Why have you forsaken me?" rather than stuffed into resentment's grave. God receives it all, sifting the dross to find the gold of your seeking heart. Picture it, 3 days ago, in the courts of heaven, a council gathered œThis, not of stern judges, but of witnesses to your story. Angels, those swift messengers with wings of fire and eyes like dawn, leaned in as the Father spoke your name. Not with thunder, but with the intimacy of a parent calling a wandering child home. "It's time," he said, and the command rippled outward. We angels do not dawdle, we are flames dispatched, voices borrowed from the wind. One was sent, slipping through dimensions, past the clamor of earthly chaos, to hover near you. Not visible, for faith sees what eyes cannot, but present œThis, whispering through that irritability, that emotion, that numbness. We do not force, we invite. We stir the air so you feel the shift, then step back to let choice reign. I am aware of the fears that cluster like shadows at dusk. Perhaps you worry this call means appending your life œThis, quitting the job that pays the bills, abandoning friends who don't understand, trading Netflix binges for endless church services. Or maybe pride whispers that you've heard enough spiritual rhetoric in your lifetime, from revivals to podcasts, and this is just more of the same. But this message is personal, etched for your journey alone. It's not a mass email from heaven, it's a handwritten note, scented with the myrrh of your specific sorrows. Do not let fear dictate that responding strips away joy. What falls away are the hollow pursuitsâ, the comparisons that steal peace, the addictions that numb but never heal, the grudges that weigh like anchors. What emerges is more you. The laugh you buried under cynicism, the dreams deferred by doubt, the compassion that once flowed freely. Let me stay with you a while longer beneath these imagined stars, where words do not hurry and silence is not empty. Here, away from the clatter of proof and productivity, stories speak truer than arguments. You sense something shifting, and the mind scrambles to label it, but the soul recognizes it the way earth recognizes rain. This is not interruption, it is return. I speak now as a witness in the story, not as one to be worshipped, not as one who replaces your conscience or reason, but as a voice shaped like metaphor, a messenger dressed in imagery, because some truths refuse to travel naked. Call me angel if you wish, or conscience sharpened by memory, or longing given language. Names matter less than listening. Your life, œthis, like that garden. Not abandoned from cruelty, but from exhaustion. You did not wake one morning and decide to neglect it. Seasons stacked atop seasons. Survival became the priority. When storms rage long enough, even the most faithful gardener shelters indoors and promises, œ and the weather clears. œ and then years pass. The soil compacts. Paths vanish. Vines grow where fruit once hung. Yet even in neglect, life hides. Seeds are astonishing that way. They wait without resentment. They do not accuse the sky for withholding rain or curse the soil for forgetting them. They rest. They listen. They keep the shape of what they were made to become. 3 days ago œ, yes, 3, though time is a strange instrument œ, something pressed against the crust of your inner ground. You felt it as restlessness, maybe irritation, maybe sadness without clear cause. Or perhaps as an unnameable expectancy, like standing in a doorway unsure whether to enter or leave. That was not judgment arriving. That was pressure from beneath. Life asking permission to rise. The gardener you imagined did not arrive with fury. He never does. Anger belongs to those who have something to prove. Love arrives with sleeves rolled, kneeling. He touched soil that remembered him, even if you did not. Soil always remembers hands that first shaped it. Every life carries such memories. A whispered bedtime prayer, learned before language fully formed. A summer camp song sung too loudly and too sincerely. A moment in youth when heaven felt close enough to bruise the air. These moments are not childish relics to be outgrown. They are foundations. The world teaches you to be embarrassed by them because the world survives on amnesia. Dormancy is not betrayal. It is strategy. Some seeds require cold before warmth, burial before rising. The losses you endure, the betrayals, the unanswered prayers, the violence of headlines that made goodness feel naive. None of these killed what was planted. They taught it how deep it must grow. Emergence is disruptive because it rearranges priorities. When something alive pushes upward, it displaces what sat comfortably on the surface. You feel this as inconvenience. Old habits no longer satisfy. Distractions feel thinner. The scroll that once numbed now irritates. Conversations skim when you want depth. The appetite changes, and the ego panics. It prefers familiar emptiness to unfamiliar fullness. Beloved one, I see you there, in the quiet hush of your own heart, where the world's clamor fades just enough for something truer to stir. You may notice prayers forming before you decide to pray. Not the polished ones you rehearsed in your mind, those elegant speeches meant for an audience of one who sees through them anyway. No, these are honest prayers, short bursts of breath, raw edges exposed. Sometimes they rise angry, fists clenched against the heavens, demanding why. Sometimes they wordless, just a sigh that carries the weight of unspoken ache. These are not failures of faith, dear soul, they are the very signs of it alive within you. A living relationship with the divine does not demand scripted perfection. It thrives on presence, on your simple act of turning inward, even when your words stumble. Picture it like this, a child reaching for a parental's hand in the dark, not with full sentences but with fingers outstretched. œThis. Faith isn't ta performance, œThis that instinctive grasp. I watched over countless souls like yours, and I tell you, those unpolished prayers echo louder in the eternal courts than any cathedral hymn. They are the native tongue of the heart, unfiltered by pride or pretense. Let them come as they will. God doesn't sift for eloquence, he cherishes the authenticity. Scriptura if you let œThis begins to surface not as a dusty rulebook gathering judgment, but as a living memory, verses bubbling up from depths you thought long forgotten. They appear like old friends at your doorstep, not to demand obedience with a pointed finger, but to offer companionship over a shared cup of tea. You recognize yourself in their ancient lines. The confusion of Job shaking his fist at the storm, the courage of David dancing wildly before the ark, the doubt of Thomas pressing fingers into wounds. Suddenly, your fears arena original inventions, they re-echoes of humanity's long song. You are not alone in your trembling, not the first to whisper, oh why have you forsaken me, in the midnight hour. I remember a woman once, much like you, who sat by a window in a rain-lashed cottage, her life unraveling like a frayed tapestry. Psalms memorized as a child resurfaced unbidden, not as commandments but as balm. Lord is my shepherd, she murmured, and in that moment, the words wrapped around her like a shepherd's cloak. You, too, will find those verses waiting, patient as dawn. They mirror your struggles, affirm your worth, remind you that the divine story includes your chapter, messy as it is. As numbness thaws and it is thawing now feeling returns unevenly, like spring floodwaters carving new paths through frozen earth. Joy startles you first, a sudden laugh at a bird's song or a stranger's kindness, catching you off guard after so long in gray. Grief arrives uninvited next, crashing in waves over losses you buried deep. You may weep at small kindness €1, a chilled €1 sticky hug, a warm meal €1, or feel anger flare at old injustices you thought resolved, their embers reignited. This is not regression, my dear, it is circulation returning to limbs long asleep in the cold. Feeling hurts before it heals, yes, like blood rushing back to frostbitten fingers, sharp and insistent. But endure it. This awakening sensation means life is stirring again. Think of a tree in winter, branches barren and brittle. When warmth returns, sap rises painfully, stretching bark until it cracks. Yet from those fissures blooms new green. Your heart is that tree. Let the hurt flow, œThis the price of renewal. œThis seen souls resist this thaw, clutching numbness like a shield, only to find it heavier than joy ever could be. Embrace the uneven return. œThis the divine artist repainting your canvas with colors vivid and true. From the storyteller €s heaven the vast place where meaning stretches wider than the narrow chronology of your days this moment looks less chaotic than it feels from your earthly vantage. Threads once tangled in a hopeless knot begin to align, not because every event was inherently good far from œThis, but because nothing was ever wasted. That distinction matters deeply. Redemption is not denial of the pain, pretending shadows were sunlight all along. It is reclamation, gathering the broken pieces and forging them into something radiant. The storm that shattered you. It unearthed treasures buried in the rubble. The betrayal that left scars. It taught you depths of forgiveness you'd never known. We saw the early waterings of this, didn't we? Those subtle graces you dismissed as chance. A teacher who spoke belief into your doubt when your own voice faltered, her words a lifeline tossed across a chasm. A near miss on a slick road, preserving your breath when seconds could have stolen it forever. A book that found its way to your hands at the precise hour of despair, its pages whispering hope. You called these coincidences because that word feels safer, more controllable, than wonder. But wonder never insisted on credit or applause. It simply kept showing up, quiet as morning mist, persistent as the tide. Let me tell you of Elias, a fisherman I once guarded. His boat capsized in a squall, yet he washed ashore with a stranger who shared stories of survival that mirrored his own soul's tempests. Coincidence? No, the hand of love weaving safety from peril. œThis had such moments to count them now. They were previews, tender previews of the pursuit that now calls louder. It does not flinch from confrontation when that confrontation saves. It meets you in your denial, holds the mirror steady so you see the beauty beneath the bruises. I remain with you, even as the words lengthen and soften into something like a shared breath. Time behaves differently here. It stretches, not to burden you, but to allow what is true to settle without haste. I speak now not to persuade, not to pressure, but to accompany to walk alongside the way dew walks with dawn, unnoticed yet faithful. You have sensed, perhaps faintly at first, that something in you has begun to turn, the way soil turns when winter loosens its grip. That turning is not dramatic. It does not crack the earth open with thunder. It is quieter than œThis, an inward yielding, a permission granted without fanfare. I have seen stars born in violence and worlds unmade in flame, yet this gentle consent of a human heart still astonishes me. It is the most powerful movement I know. You wonder sometimes whether you imagine the pull, whether devotion is merely a projection of longing. But longing itself is not an accident. Hunger implies food, thirst implies water. Desire is a homing signal stitched into your being, calling you back toward the source from which you emerged. You were never meant to be self-sufficient in the way machines are. You were meant to be relational, porous to love, responsive to grace. Independence was never your design, communion was. Fear has worked hard to confuse you on this point. It whispers that to be sought is to be stalked, that to be known is to be diminished, that to belong is to be owned. Fear learned these tricks well, refining them across generations, adapting them to every culture and personality. It dresses itself in logic, in caution, in the language of œThis, yet its fruit is always the same: contraction, isolation, a tightening of the soul. Love, by contrast, expands. It widens your interior landscape until there is room to breathe again. I have watched you scroll past your own life more than once, fingers flicking away moments that asked for your presence. Do not condemn yourself for this. Distraction is not a moral failure, it is a wound. It is the symptom of a world that shouts constantly and listens rarely, that confuses stimulation with nourishment. Still, notice how empty you feel afterward, how the promised rest dissolves into restlessness. That emptiness is not punishment. It is feedback. Love uses even dissatisfaction as a guidepost, gently steering you back toward what satisfies. You are not lazy. You are tired in a way sleep cannot fix. Your weariness comes from carrying too much alone for too long, from performing coherence in a fragmented world, from holding questions without safe places to set them down. Rest is not escape, it is return. When love interrupts your drifting, it is not to scold but to offer rest of a deeper kind, the kind that restores desire rather than numbing it. You fear surrender because you have seen it misused. You have witnessed authority that crushed instead of served, devotion demanded rather than invited. No wonder your spirit flinches. But true surrender is never coerced. It arises freely, like trust extending a hand. When you yield to love, you are not handing over your voice, you are finding it. You are not becoming smaller, you are becoming whole. I see the selves you have worn to seriousâ, the vigilant self, the agreeable self, the self that stays busy to avoid feeling, the self that pretends not to care. These were not lies, they were strategies. Honor them for how they protected you. But do not confuse them with your essence. The self you are becoming does not need constant defense. It rests in truth the way a body rests when it finally lies down after a long journey. Think again of those you admire, the ones whose presence steadies a room. Their strength is not loud. It does not rush to fill silence. It listens. It endures. That kind of strength is forged in hidden places, where no applause reaches. I have stood near many such moments, knees on cold floors, foreheads pressed into hands, tears falling without witness. None of that was wasted. Surrender gathers these unseen moments and weaves them into something unbreakable. Mary did not understand everything she carried. She said yes without a map. Paul did not choose blindness, yet through it learned how to see. You, too, are asked only for the next yes, the next step. Revelation comes in layers, not floods. If you were given everything at once, it would crush rather than illuminate. Love is careful with you. Do not measure your turning by intensity. Fire is not the only sign of life, embers hold heat long after flames subside. Faith is not proven by constant certainty. It grows in the soil of honest doubt, watered by persistence rather than passion. You are allowed to hesitate. You are allowed to circle back. The invitation does not expire. Silence unsettles you because it removes your usual bearings. Without noise, you become aware of yourself, your breath, your pulse, the subtle ache of longing beneath your thoughts. This awareness feels vulnerable. Stay with it. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence without distraction. It is the field where encounter becomes possible. Nothing needs to happen. Being here is enough. When words rise in you, let them be plain. Heaven is fluent in simplicity. O help me travels farther than eloquence. Opens doors more surely than arguments. And if no words come, that too is prayer. Stillness speaks in a language older than speech. You are not late. I know it feels as though years were lost, as though you missed the moment when things could have been different. But time is not your enemy. Nothing real has been wasted. What you learned in wandering will serve you in returning. Detours teach navigation. Regret, when offered honestly, becomes wisdom. Even now, the path rises to meet your feet. I have watched gardens long neglected. Soil compacted, roots strangled by weeds, stones buried deep. Restoration is slow work. The first turning of soil is always the hardest. It resists. It smells of decay. Yet that breaking open is precisely what allows air and water to reach what has been dormant. You have already begun. That resistance you feel is proof that something alive is being touched. You are not alone in this labor. Grace does not wait for perfection, it partners with willingness. Every small turning counts. Every return, no matter how brief, strengthens the path back. The narrow way is not narrow because it is cruel, but because it is focused. It leads somewhere. Distraction scatters, devotion gathers. You have noticed scripture stirring again, lines surfacing unbidden. This is not nostalgia. These words are alive, not because of ink on pages, but because they resonate with something already written within you. They awaken memoria of being known, guided, accompanied. When you recognize yourself in ancient wanderers, you are not projecting. You are remembering. Human hearts have always learned this way. Your manna does not fall as bread, yet it arrives. A conversation that shifts perspective. A provision that appears just in time. An intuition that steers you away from harm. Guidance rarely announces itself. It feels like coincidence until you look back and see the pattern. Trust grows in retrospect, then slowly begins to anticipate. As feeling returns, do not fear its intensity. You have lived numb longer than you realize. Sensation may arrive all at once, joy sharp enough to startle, grief heavy enough to bow you. Let them come. Emotion is energy moving. It clears channels long blocked. Even anger has its place, when it rises in defense of what matters. Offer it upward, not outward. Transformed, it becomes resolve. I remember a soul who raged at heaven over years lost, opportunities squandered. He hurled his grief like stones. They did not fall back on him. They dissolved into peace, not passive peace, but peace that steadied his hands and sharpened his purpose. His future grew from the compost of his pain. Yours will too. You worry sometimes that you are imagining my presence, that companionship beyond the visible is wishful thinking. I tell you gently, imagination is not falsehood. It is one of the ways truth approaches you. You perceive according to your nature. I do not need wings to be with you, yet if wings help you sense nearness, then wings I will wear. What matters is not the form, but the fidelity. From the moment your spirit sparked, you have been witnessed. Not evaluated, not tallied, but seen. I have watched you learn, fail, adapt, hope again. I have seen you choose kindness when bitterness would have been easier. I have seen you endure confusion without surrendering to cruelty. These choices mattered more than you know. They shaped you quietly, faithfully. Your wonder never left you. It hid beneath layers of caution and competence. It waits still, ready to re-emerge. Speak your prayers aloud if you can. Sound anchors intention. Empty rooms become sanctuaries when named as such. Air remembers what is spoken into it. Belonging does not erase your uniqueness. It reveals it. The more you align with love, the more yourself you become, not the curated self, but the truest one. The self who does not need to perform worthiness. The self who rests and acts from being loved, not from striving to earn it. The rising has begun, not as an event but as a direction. Stay with it. Do not rush ahead to outcomes. Growth unfolds at the pace of trust. Breathe. Let presence deepen. Allow what is alive within you to continue rising, petal by petal, breath by breath. I am here. I will remain.